You've just had a chance to practice sorting the data and forming some groups on your own. Let's take a look at this intermediate model together, and I'll show you one possible way that you could have sorted the data. When I begin, I like to start with highlighting my first column of data, my e-reading, and sorting and filtering by that measure. We'll expand the selection so it includes the other data points and the names. Now I can see clearly which of my students were below the benchmark score in that first assessment. It also makes it much clearer as I look across to see that there is some great similarities amongst this data. I'll begin by looking at my first group of students that have some similar looking data. I'm going to look at Sam, Bo, Ivy, Frankie, and Eduardo. Now, as I look at these 5, I notice a lot of similarities, but there's one thing that stands out to me, and that's Frankie's oral reading fluency score. It's significantly higher than the other students in that first batch of kids, and I think Frankie may be a better fit with some of these students down here that will begin forming group 2. So for my first group of students, I'm going to take Sam, Bo, Ivy, and Eduardo. And they will form group 1. Then I look at my second group. So I know that I skipped Frankie and said he was going to be a better fit in my second group. Let's go ahead and move Frankie down here now so we don't forget to come back to him. Then I'm going to take a look at Olga through Carolyn. Now, as I look at this group, again, I notice a lot of similarities in this first column and second column of data. But as I go over here, Anna really stands out. She has got 2 6s in her district benchmark, which means that she is significantly advanced in those 2 areas, as a 4 would typically be considered proficient. Anna doesn't quite seem to match up with these other students, and so I'm going to save Anna and hold on to her until I get to group 3. For now, let's go ahead and add Olga with Frankie, and then let's add Quincy, Tate, and Carolyn as well, all with very similar data points when we look at them. This will form group 2. Then I go back over here, and I want to start with Anna, who we skipped. I'm going to begin by putting Anna into my third grouping. And from there, I'm going to look at Nancy, Rodolfo, Gunnar, and Geraldine. The rest of these students have quite a few scores in the proficient range, and their data is somewhat similar. Although there are a few jumps, most of their data looks like they could fit together. and I'll go ahead and move them into group 3. Okay, then I've got a few students left, Lance down through Kane. As I'm looking at these students, again, I'm noticing a lot of similarities and a lot of proficient scores. One thing stands out to me though. As I look down here, Morgan has a score of 92 and is also a 3 here. This is quite a bit lower than some of her classmates right above her, scoring 192 or 167, 158. And I'm noticing that in group 3, we had Geraldine with a 173, quite a bit higher than where Morgan is. I'm thinking that it may be good to bring Morgan up into that third group and switch her out with Geraldine. All right, so now I've got my third group formed, and as I look at them, it seems to be a closer fit than having kept Geraldine up in that group. I'm then going to put the remaining students that I have in group 4, and of course I'll do a final check to make sure that I have matched these groups up as best as possible. You'll also notice that group 4 is a bit larger, but these are students who are at or above grade level and can be in a group of 5 to 7. And this group is 7 students in group 4, so we are still within the limitations that we should be. As I look at my data then, I'm considering any final pieces such as special education needs, English language learners, and so on. And this is one possible scenario that you could have used for grouping these intermediate students. One other thing you might consider is looking at Ursula. Ursula is also one of those students who has a bit lower of an oral reading fluency score. If you want, you could have moved Ursula, and again, some of this takes teacher knowledge that you'll only have if you know these students, and you could have switched Ursula out with Rodolfo. Rodolfo has very similar scores in that the benchmark number 1 was a 3, just like this was a 3, and a 4 proficient here, just like this was proficient here. But where Rodolfo and Ursula might make a good switch is in this oral reading fluency category that I'm considering here, as Rodolfo is quite a bit more advanced than Ursula is in that area. So I'm going to go ahead and take Rodolfo and switch out for Ursula. And now as I look at these, I'll make my final check. Are these the groupings that work best with my students and the data that I see in front of me? This is one possible scenario that you could use for grouping your students.